Today on Inside Utah Politics, maternal mental health, the new resource available for Utah moms struggling with postpartum depression. We're looking into the need and how it can help out in our state. Plus, the move to Super Tuesday, putting Utah on the national stage. Senator Bernie Sanders winning our state on the Democratic side. We caught up with him for a one-on-one earlier in the week.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We begin this morning with a crucial conversation on maternal mental health here in the state of Utah. Erin Jemison is with the YWCA of Utah, Brooke Dorff with the Utah Health Department, and Evie Hayhurst Figgett is a Utah mom who has experienced the impact of postpartum depression firsthand. Ladies, so glad to have you with us for this conversation this morning. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Evie, let's start with you. It's something you dealt with firsthand.
Yes.
Talk about the impact that it had on your life.
You know, the impact initially wasn't something that I detected within myself. I went undiagnosed for 6 months, and I had symptoms such as, at first, it started with anxiety of just not sleeping. Then it moved into sleeping too much, not feeding myself, being really emotionally vulnerable, and ultimately my husband and my mom are the ones that saw the symptoms in me and helped me find care.
What was that like? Was that hard to accept at first when your husband and your mom came to you?
You know, to some degree, yes, and others, no. I was in denial. I didn't want to accept that this was an issue that I was dealing with. But when they pointed out the signs to me, I was able to say, okay, you're right, I don't have to be suffering. And this is not just normal new mom stuff. This is something a little bit deeper.
Okay, we are going to get more into that in a little bit, but Erin, let's bring you into the conversation. Yeah. This is something your organization has been really focusing on at the legislature. From a policy standpoint, get us up to speed on what you guys are working on.
Yeah, so one of the things that we found was that this wasn't on the radar of most Utah legislators and policymakers. They didn't understand what this issue entailed. They thought of it as, quote unquote, the baby blues, no big deal. This is how most women feel after they have a baby. And we've really been working with them for the past few years to raise awareness about the issue. We had a resolution last session, 2018, to say that this is a serious public health issue. We got people in front of them, letting them know we don't have a good system of care in this state. This is a government issue. And then last year we were able to really get some first statewide investment and funding to start to help this issue. But we've got more work to do. I think we're making good progress.
Yeah. That's how the legislative process works. It starts as a seed and then you grow it from there.
Yeah.
What else moving forward? We're going to talk more about what the funding provided, but what else moving forward do you see needs to be done in our state?
A couple of things. One is that when women and families are reaching out for help, they sometimes are getting referred to mental health folks who don't have a specialty in maternal mental health. So we're really working with community partners such as the health department on training and making sure that mental health care providers are really specializing in this issue. We need physicians, pediatricians, et cetera, to be screening and referring for these issues. And as much as we can get that in their best practice and the way that they operate, the better. And then ultimately, insurance coverage, Medicaid coverage, that's really what it comes down to for a lot of people, and that's probably our biggest lift policy-wise.
All right, Brooke, let's bring you into the conversation. Paint the picture for us, postpartum depression and other issues for maternal mental health here in the state of Utah. How big of a problem is it?
So 1 in 3 women in Utah, based on our data, will experience one of 3 things, either depression or anxiety during pregnancy or postpartum depression. And that's just the things that we track. But in addition to that, we review our death data at the health department, and suicide is the second leading cause of death. And maternal mental health plays a huge role in how that affects a mom and her whole family. And that is including the Wasatch Front and beyond, all through rural Utah as well.
Okay, so we touched base on this new resource available. It's a website. Tell us what the website is. We do have it on a graphic as well so our viewers can see it at home, and what it's all about.
So for a lot of Utah families, it's hard for them to know where to go to find a specialist. They maybe finally identify a problem in themselves, and then they say, okay, now what? So we created this awesome resource. It's maternalmentalhealth.utah.gov, And somebody can go on there, and it's a map, and they can search by provider type. It includes over 100 providers right now, and everything from an OBGYN down to a doula or a lactation consultant. We have free support groups that are listed on there, and they can find anybody who's been trained in maternal mental health, including narrowing down the search by insurance type, which is one of the things is paying for it, right? So they can narrow the search by insurance and where they live.
So is that something we're hoping to expand on, get more providers on board in the future?
Yeah, more providers trained. It includes local health departments that have been trained in this, so a lot of different people.
Okay. Evie, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show, because you are a story that there is hope and you can overcome this. Talk to us about how, after you came to terms with it, you were able to overcome it.
So after my husband and I, we went in to see a psychiatrist, was our first step. And we decided as a group that our best first thing would to get me on medication until I could balance out. And we developed a plan, and I was able to stabilize and be happy and fulfilled and enjoyed, the rest of that first year of motherhood. And I really healed in the coming years, and the work kept going. And we developed a plan prior to my second pregnancy and said, we will only have a second baby if we feel like it's something that I can mentally handle.
And you came to the conclusion that yes, it is something I can handle.
So I now have a healthy, beautiful 9-month-old baby. And she, through my pregnancy, every now and then, I'll admit, those feelings still are there. And even postpartum, I still experienced symptoms. However, this time around, I was able to know, we had me on Zoloft at 32 weeks, knowing that I was at risk, and I was checking in with my psychiatrist regularly, and I was able to get help, like what we're trying to do with this website. That's so important, because women need to be able to feel empowered to seek help, and through help like that, I was able to have a more successful postpartum.
So you still had some of the issues, but you're able to manage it better the second time.
Absolutely, yes.
Erin, an important message here. A lot of women, when they're going through this type of situation, probably feel alone. And they should know that other women go through this as well.
I think that's huge, that isolation and even shame that comes with it, even though we know they have nothing to be ashamed of. I think there's a lot of cultural pressure around new motherhood and what those expectations are. And so if we can get the message out there that this is actually quite common and that there is help and there are resources out there, that's really our goal.
Brooke, I also heard another really crucial part of this story, in that her husband and her mother had to come to her and say, this is what we're noticing. What's your message to people who may be seeing something like that in their loved one?
It's okay to say something, that it's okay to speak up and address your partner and say, hey, I see that you're acting differently than before. Again, moms don't have to feel like that all the time, but sometimes they feel like they can't speak up. So partners, families, community members, often we hear from moms, oh, my best friend saw this in me. She noticed she wouldn't let me come over, or she wouldn't let me hold the baby, or whatever. But it's okay to speak up and say something, because in the end, in the long run, you're going to be helping everybody.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds left. Evie, we'll give that to you. What's your message to someone who may be watching this and feeling down and blue?
My message is to seek help. Even if you think, oh, this might be baby blues, it's better to speak to a professional and have them help you assess whether or not this is branching into something more serious, because it should be taken seriously. And it is okay, and there are resources, no matter your income level, no matter your demographic, no matter where you are at in life. You deserve to be happy, you deserve to enjoy motherhood, and I'm really appreciative to what these women are doing for moms like us in Utah.
And I love how you put that. You deserve to be happy, because that is definitely the truth. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure that it helps others take the step that they need to get the help they need. And thank you all for being here for this important conversation. Really appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, with Super Tuesday in the books, we're going to take a look at where the race for the White House goes from here. Our panel will be weighing in on that. But first, Senator Bernie Sanders stopping in Salt Lake City to rally the troops this week. We caught up with him before that event for a one-on-one interview. We'll get to that right after the break. Utah had a place on the national stage this year with the move to Super Tuesday. The Democratic candidates focusing in on our state in the fight for every last delegate. Senator Bernie Sanders was here to rally the troops on Monday, and I caught up with him to go one-on-one. All right, Senator, appreciate your time this morning. I want to talk to you first about Utah specific. You did very well, overwhelmingly winning the caucus here in 2016. You're ahead of the polls for Super Tuesday right now. What is it about your message that is resonating with Utah Democrats?
Well, I think what Utah Democrats, and hopefully all the people of Utah understand, is that there is something very wrong in America when we have 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of America, when we have more income and wealth inequality than in the last 100 years, when we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people or provide paid family and medical leave, among many other issues. So I think our agenda speaks to Democrats in Utah and hopefully to people all over the state.
The Utah Democratic Party, there's a big section of moderates who are right now behind other candidates. What's your message to them to try to bring them on board?
Well, I think all of us understand, whether we're Democrats, whether we're independents, and some Republicans, that we have a president today who is the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. This is a president who is a pathological liar, and no matter what your politics may be, I don't think people are comfortable with a pathological liar. Truth is, he's running a corrupt administration. He is undermining American democracy and apparently has never read the Constitution of the United States. That brings us all together. So I think at the end of the day, no matter who wins the Democratic nomination, and I certainly hope it's me, we're going to come together to defeat Trump.
I want to talk to you specifically about some of your campaign promises. Healthcare for all.
Yes.
College education, you would like to have free tuition there as well.
And public colleges.
Public colleges. So in Utah, our lone Democratic member in Congress, he has gone on the record saying he opposes those two things. So how do you build a consensus if you are elected president with Congress to follow through and deliver on those promises?
Well, sometimes members of Congress, Republicans, Democrats, are out of touch with where the American people are. The American people understand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, we can't give tax breaks to billionaires and force millions of young people to leave school deeply in debt. And many Americans, I would say the vast majority of the American people, understand that in the year 2020, if we're going to be competitive in the global economy, we have to make sure that all of our people, regardless of their income, are able to get a higher education, which is why I strongly believe that we must make public colleges and universities tuition free. And we pay for that through a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. We bailed out Wall Street 12 years ago. It is Wall Street's time to help working families today.
So you're confident you can build coalitions and consensus with Congress to deliver on those things?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Want to talk to you a little bit about the Democratic field. You guys haven't been holding back any punches. It's been quite contentious. Mayor Buttigieg specifically, calling out things on your end, saying you're not a member of the Democratic Party and that you're a socialist.
Well, first of all, let me just...
Yeah, address that and then also talk about healing, as you talked about, and coming together
Good.
for the end goal.
First of all, not only am I a member of the Democratic Party, I am part of the Democratic leadership in the United States Senate. There are 10 of us in leadership. I am one of them. Second of all, the way you bring people together is to develop an agenda that works for the overwhelming majority of the American people and not just the people on top. And when you bring people together, let me give you an example. You have a very conservative senator here named Mike Lee. Mike and I crossed party divisions to work together so that for the very first time in the history of this country, we utilized the War Powers Act to win a vote in the Senate to get the United States out of the horrific war in Yemen. Conservative Republican, a progressive Democrat work together. That's how you bring people together.
Still to come, Super Tuesday was a defining moment in shaping the race for president. Our panel will weigh in after the break.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to break down some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Auditor John Dougall and former Salt Lake City Councilman Charlie Luke. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
The big story of the week was Super Tuesday. Charlie, let's start with you. You could also call it Turnaround Tuesday. It really defined the race.
I mean, this was the craziest primary that I've seen, but I think it's probably the biggest comeback in American political history. But I think that I don't think we can attribute all of it to Joe Biden being Joe Biden. I think that what we're seeing is that there are a majority of people who are considered the establishment of the party, really concerned about a Bernie Sanders candidacy and the chances of actually winning against Trump in November with Bernie is at the top of the ticket. I think that Joe Biden, and I like Joe Biden, but I think Joe Biden won in spite of Joe Biden yesterday, and that's what is the most remarkable.
Wow,
Okay,
what an endorsement.
We're going to get more into that in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But John, I want to bring you in. President Trump overwhelmingly taking the state of Utah with 88% of the vote. We know he struggled in Utah back in 2016. Do you take this as a sign as he has won over some of the Republicans who struggled with him?
He's won over a lot more Republicans than he did 4 years ago. They're seeing some good things that he's done. I was visiting with a man that I ran into on Monday, and he was talking about how many folks are just dumping on the president. It's unfair. And so you're seeing more and more of those Utahns, especially Republican Utahns, leaning towards the president and supporting him.
Let's talk a little bit about early voting.
Yeah.
We had that here in the state of Utah. Some Democrats cast their votes for candidates who were no longer in the race when it came around. Did early voting impact Super Tuesday, especially for Joe Biden?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think especially in Utah, where you see how well Sanders did, and Sanders has always done well in Utah. His Utah team was great in 2016. They've been working really hard this year as well, and so yeah, I mean I think those who voted early. Wouldn't have voted for Buttigieg, wouldn't have voted for Amy Klobuchar, and probably would have supported Biden.
What about even with the Bloomberg matchup, where Utah Democrats who voted early didn't necessarily see the momentum that Joe Biden was getting out of South Carolina? Do you think some of the Bloomberg supporters might have gone for Biden as well?
Sure. I mean, I think if anyone could have forecast Super Tuesday, I think there would have been a lot of people voting differently.
John, you have a solution for this that you'd like to talk about real quick.
Well, I think ranked choice voting is one of those things that says, hey, if you voted early and your candidate drops out, hey, your vote can roll to your second or third choice. And I think that would have had a benefit, and I think there's going to be Democrats, not just in Utah, but across the nation saying, maybe we need to put something like that in place to make sure if you vote early and your candidate drops out, your vote gets counted for somebody else, your second choice.
And we did see a few local municipalities try that in Utah recently, so we'll see if that gains momentum moving forward. I want to get back to this idea. We have two candidates on the Democratic side who represent two different ideologies.
Yeah.
What do you make of that assessment as this race moves forward?
One ideology won yesterday, the other did not. The ideology that we need, the Democratic Party is far more moderate nationally than I think we give them credit for. That is the ideology that won out. Bernie's revolution did not happen. Whether it was young voters not turning out, whether it was Latino voters not turning out in some of the states other than California, that I think that's really the big takeaway.
Bernie,
I'm going to take issue with part of that. I think the two issues, the two lanes, are Bernie and anti-Bernie. The Democrats aren't just concerned with Bernie head-to-head with Trump. They're also concerned with down ticket. When they have Bernie at the top of the ticket preaching socialism, it makes a bunch of their folks, especially on the fence, very nervous about being on the same ticket with him.
we saw this in 2016, though. Bernie supporters are very loyal. In 2016, when he did not win the nomination, they didn't show up in November.
They didn't show up.
So how does this divide potentially play out?
Well, I think President Trump, if you look at his tweets, he's clearly trying to divide it by acting about Bernie being poor and picked on, and
that the Democrats are going to steal the nomination again.
All this stuff. The reality, though, I think John's absolutely right on the down ticket. The concerns about down ticket voting, that is a big concern. The real winner of Tuesday was Jim Clyburn. I think that understanding the traditional base of the Democratic Party is critical. The African American vote is something that you have to have if you are going to be the candidate. Bernie has never done well with the African American vote. He can hope for youth vote. He can hope for Latino votes. But you know, when you look at the results yesterday, it was a clear command of the African American vote that got Joe Biden where he is now.
John, as this divide plays out, does that benefit Republicans?
Oh, absolutely. The more they fight between themselves, I think it helps the Republicans. And if Bernie is the one that comes out at the end of the day, I think that basically says Trump's going to win.
Okay, let's delve into that a little bit more. The potential matchups in November, a Trump versus Biden versus a Trump versus Sanders. As a Republican, which one of those two would you rather see? I think you might have just answered that.
I just answered it. I think Bernie versus Trump, Trump wins.
Okay, what about Biden versus Trump?
It's a harder race. I think Trump still has a solid message he can run on, and it would be a close race. I think he still has the advantage there, but if it's Bernie versus Trump, you know, Bernie gets his clock claimed.
Okay, we hit on this a little bit earlier. Utahns who struggle with the president, would they maybe cross party lines and vote for Biden?
Some will, and many won't. I think you're getting more and more Republican support for the president.
I don't think you can count on that. I think the recent Utah polling for the president shows that Republicans, even if they don't like the president, are fine ignoring a lot of the other stuff.
What about independents in Utah?
Independents in Utah, I mean, I think that you know, would have an easier time, in my opinion, voting for Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders. But you know, I do think that any Democrat who's saying that any candidate is going to defeat the president, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that Trump is going to be a very, very difficult candidate in 2020. I do believe that Joe Biden has the best shot to do that, and I think that it is the establishment coalescing behind him that leads me to believe that.
Do you see President Trump winning either of those two scenarios in November?
I think he wins. I mean, I think he's the front runner right now.
I think he's the front runner as well.
He's the front runner, absolutely. Okay. And the simple fact is, you've got the dynamic where for a lot of Utahns, they don't like his approach, they don't like his style, but they do like a lot of what he's delivering.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I hear that a lot. Let's move on to the fact that we were involved in Super Tuesday. A lot of attention on the state of Utah. Do you guys like the move of getting up to Super Tuesday and becoming more relevant in the primary?
I think for Utah, playing a role nationally, we have to have that, and I think this is the first year that we've kind of played around with the caucus 4 years ago, but having a primary, it did make it relevant.
It was a big role on the Democratic side. It wasn't really a role on the Republican side.
Well, that has a lot to do with the chemistry of the race, though, too, right?
If you're going to have an incumbent, if you have an incumbent president, it's not going to be that.
Right.
Now, I would love to get rid of Iowa and New Hampshire and rotate. Let's get a rotation so it's not always Iowa.
I'm good with that too.
I think this year we're definitely seeing momentum.
Did the results come in yet?
No, still waiting. Yeah, if you look back at 2016, 250,000 Utahns cast a ballot for the presidential primary. We're over 500,000 this year. So what does that indicate?
It indicates there's a lot of interest in these races and stuff like that. And when you vote late in the year and it's like, it's already figured out, it's like, my vote doesn't matter.
All right.
Utah needs to act like we're not a flyover state if we don't want to be a flyover state. And I think this was the first real step.
I mean, we saw money dropped for advertising. We saw the candidates coming to Utah. It was definitely a different ballgame.
Didn't every candidate in the race basically come here?
Yeah.
Most, yeah.
I mean, even Tulsi Gabbard was here.
They came here for
Some came here early for fundraisers, others later for rallies. All right, gentlemen, great conversation. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. The legislative session comes to an end this week. The final day is Thursday, March 12th. Caucus night for Utah Republicans and Democrats is Tuesday, March 24th. State conventions are set for Saturday, April 25th. And then the state primary election is Tuesday, June 30th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Just log on and search Glenn Mills ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.